The Empire that never fell. The Zarathian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. 3,000 years without a single defeat. 3,000 years without mercy. Their ships were black as the void itself, massive dreadnoughts that blocked out entire stars when they arrived. Each vessel carried enough firepower to crack a planet in half. The Zarathians didn't negotiate. They didn't trade. They conquered. And they were very, very good at it. Commander Vexthal stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship, the Dark Dominion. His four eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he watched another civilization burn on the view screen. The Terran people had resisted for exactly 4 hours before their defenses collapsed. Now their cities were ash, their fleets were debris, and their survivors were being loaded onto slave transports. Another victory for the Empire, Vexthal announced to his crew. They chittered and clicked in approval, their mandibles clacking together in the Zarathian version of applause. But then, something strange happened. The communications officer, a younger Zarathian named Krill, suddenly stood upright, his antenna twitching wildly. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission. It's on all frequencies." "Every single one." Vexthal turned slowly. "From the Pelorans. They wish to surrender formally?" "No, sir. It's not from this system at all. The signal is coming from beyond the outer rim. From uncharted space, the entire bridge fell silent. Beyond the outer rim was nothing. Empty space. No civilizations, no resources, no life. The Zarathian Empire had mapped every corner of the known galaxy. There was nothing out there. "Play it," Vexthal commanded. Static filled the bridge. Then a voice, speaking in perfect galactic standard, calm and almost friendly. "Attention, Zarathian Empire. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Odyssey. We've been watching you. We've seen what you do to peaceful worlds. We've counted your crimes, and we've decided that enough is enough. You have 48 hours to withdraw all forces from occupied territories and present yourselves for trial. If you refuse, we will come for you. This is your only warning." Silence. Then Vexthal began to laugh. It was a harsh, rattling sound that echoed through the bridge. Soon the entire crew joined him, their laughter building into a cacophony of mockery. "Humans." Vexthal gasped between laughs. "I had forgotten they existed. Those primitive apes from that tiny blue world we catalogued centuries ago. They barely had chemical rockets when we last observed them." Krill pulled up data on his console. "Sir, according to our records, humanity should still be confined to their single planet. They lack faster-than-light travel. They lack energy weapons. They're classified as level 2 on the civilization scale, barely above stone tools." Vexthal's laughter faded to an amused smile. "Send a response. Tell these humans that the Zarathian Empire does not take orders from insects. Tell them that if they transmit again, we will find their worthless planet and turn it into a monument of glass and radiation." The message was sent. 20 minutes later, another transmission came through. "Captain Chen here again. We received your message, Commander Vexthal. We figured you'd respond that way. Humans have a saying, actions speak louder than words. So let us show you what we can do. We're sending you coordinates. Be there in 48 hours. Come alone, come with your entire fleet, we don't really care. But come ready, because this is where your empire ends." Vexthal's amusement vanished, replaced by cold anger. The coordinates appeared on his screen. They marked a location in neutral space, 3 systems away from any inhabited world. "An empty meeting ground. They dare to challenge us," Vexthal hissed. "They dare to threaten the Zarathian Empire." His tactical officer approached cautiously. "Sir, should we ignore them? They're clearly bluffing. A single primitive species cannot possibly—" "No," Vexthal interrupted. "We will go to these coordinates. We will bring the full might of the Empire's war fleet. And we will teach these humans what happens when you challenge gods." He turned to face his crew, his voice rising with righteous fury. "Send word to all battle groups. Every dreadnought, every carrier, every destroyer. We assemble the Grand Armada. Not because we need it to crush these insects, but because I want the entire galaxy to see what happens when you defy Zarathian power." The crew erupted in enthusiastic clicks and chitters. Over the next 2 days, the Zarathian Empire mobilized its military might. 500 warships, the largest concentration of force ever assembled in galactic history, converged on the coordinates. Dreadnoughts the size of mountains, carriers that launched thousands of fighters, weapons that could sterilize entire planets. Throughout the galaxy, other civilizations watched in horror. The Empire was gathering its full strength. Someone had angered them badly. Whoever these humans were, they would soon be erased from existence so completely that not even their atoms would remember they had existed. On the bridge of the Dark Dominion, Vexthal watched the countdown timer reach 0. They had arrived at the coordinates. Empty space surrounded them. Stars twinkled in the distance. Nothing else. No enemy fleet. No defenses, nothing. Where are they? Vexthal demanded. Krill scanned frantically. Sir, I'm detecting nothing. No ships, no energy signatures, no... He stopped. Wait. I have something. Single contact. Extreme range. It's moving toward us. One ship? Vexthal leaned forward. They sent one ship? Yes, sir. Single vessel. Medium size. Approximately 1/10 the mass of our dreadnoughts. No obvious weapons visible on its hull. Sir, it's approaching at impossible speed. The view screen activated automatically, zooming in on the approaching vessel. It was beautiful in a strange, alien way. Where Zarathian ships were all harsh angles and brutal efficiency, this human ship flowed. Its hull was a pristine white that seemed to glow with its own light. Blue energy rippled across its surface like water. It moved through space not like it was fighting against the void, but like it belonged there, like the universe itself was welcoming it home. Across its bow, in bright blue letters, was written, UES Odyssey, and it was heading straight for 500 Zarathian warships, alone. The ship that shouldn't exist, the Odyssey came to a stop exactly 10,000 kilometers from the Zarathian armada. It hung there in space, completely still, completely calm, like a single white dove facing an army of black ravens. On the bridge of the Dark Dominion, Vexthal stared at the human ship with a mixture of confusion and contempt. That's it, he said quietly. They bring one ship to face the Grand Armada? His tactical officer was analyzing the human vessel with increasingly bewildered expressions. Sir, our scanners are having difficulty penetrating their hull. The energy signature is unlike anything in our database. It's not fusion, not antimatter, not quantum compression. It's something else entirely. I don't care what powers it, Vexthal snapped. Ready all weapons. Target that ship. I want it vaporized. Sir, Krill interrupted. Incoming transmission from the human vessel. On screen, the view screen changed, and for the first time, Vexthal saw a human. She was small compared to a Zarathian. Her body soft and weak-looking, covered in a crisp blue and white uniform. Her skin was a light brown, her eyes were dark and sharp, and her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She sat in a chair that looked almost comically simple compared to the massive command throne Vexthal occupied. Behind her, Vexthal could see the Odyssey's bridge. It was clean, efficient, and filled with soft light. Human crew members sat at various stations, calm and professional. None of them looked afraid. None of them looked worried. That bothered Vexthal more than he wanted to admit. Commander Vexthal, the human woman said with a slight smile. I'm Captain Sarah Chen. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Invitation? Vexthal's voice dripped with venom. You call this an invitation? You threaten the Zarathian Empire and then appear with a single pathetic ship? Are all humans this stupid, or are you special? Captain Chen's smile didn't waver. I understand you're confused. Let me explain. You see, humanity has been watching your empire for a long time. We've seen you destroy 47 civilizations. We've seen you enslave billions. We've seen you burn worlds just to prove you could. And we've been preparing. Preparing? Vexthal laughed. Preparing with this? He gestured at the Odyssey on his screen. I have 500 warships, human. 500! Each one can destroy a planet. What can your little ship possibly do against that? Would you like to find out? Chen asked pleasantly. Vexthal's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. You must be. No species advances from chemical rockets to whatever technology you possess in just 200 years. It's impossible. You're right, Chen agreed. It is impossible. Under normal circumstances. But humans don't do normal very well. We're stubborn like that. When we discovered you existed, when we saw what you were doing, we made a choice. Every human on Earth, all 15 billion of us, dedicated ourselves to one single goal, developing the technology to stop you. She stood up from her chair and walked closer to the camera. We didn't build cities. We built research facilities. We didn't make art, we made weapons. We didn't have children. We built ships. For 200 years, Commander, humanity has had one purpose, preparing for this moment. And now we're here. Vexthal felt a strange sensation creeping up his spine. It took him a moment to recognize it because he hadn't felt it in decades. Fear. He crushed it immediately. Enough talk, he snarled. I tire of your boasting. All ships, fire! The order rippled through the Grand Armada. 500 warships unleashed hell itself. Plasma cannons that could melt through solid steel like butter. Missile swarms carrying planet-killer warheads. Energy beams that could slice through starship hulls. Railguns firing projectiles at relativistic speeds. Every weapon in the Zarathian arsenal fired simultaneously. All aimed at one single human ship. Space itself seemed to ignite. On the Odyssey's bridge, Captain Chen calmly walked back to her chair and sat down. Shields, she said simply. The weapons fire reached the Odyssey and stopped. A sphere of brilliant blue energy materialized around the human ship. The Zarathian weapons struck it like raindrops hitting an ocean. The plasma dissipated. The missiles exploded harmlessly. The energy beams scattered. The railgun projectiles simply stopped, hanging in space for a moment before tumbling away. Not a single shot touched the Odyssey's hull. On the Dark Dominion, every Zarathian on the bridge stood frozen in shock. Impossible, Vexthal whispered. Nothing can withstand that much firepower. Nothing! Krill's voice shook as he read his instruments. Sir, their shields didn't even fluctuate. It was like they absorbed infinite energy. Our most powerful weapons did literally nothing. Captain Chen appeared on the view screen again. She hadn't moved. She looked exactly as calm as before. Your turn is over, Commander, she said softly. Now it's ours. All ships! Vexthal roared. Full reverse. Get away from that thing! But it was too late. The Odyssey moved. It didn't accelerate gradually like a normal ship. One moment it was stationary. The next moment it was in the middle of the Zarathian formation, having crossed 10,000 kilometers in less than a second. A Zarathian dreadnought, the Crimson Death, tried to ram the human ship. The Odyssey simply phased through it like a ghost, emerging on the other side completely unharmed, while the dreadnought's engines suddenly went dark. What's happening? Vexthal demanded. Sir, the Crimson Death reports total systems failure. Their reactor is offline. Their weapons are dead. Life support is on emergency power only. The Odyssey moved again, dancing through the Zarathian fleet like a shark through a school of fish. Every ship it passed went dark. No explosions. No violence. Just shut down. They're disabling us. The tactical officer screamed. They're hitting our ships with some kind of electromagnetic pulse. No, not electromagnetic. It's something else. It's reaching through our shields, through our armor, directly into our systems. Captain Chen's voice came through every speaker on every Zarathian ship simultaneously. We call it a neural disruptor. It sends a signal that shuts down all electronic systems in range. Non-lethal, efficient. We designed it specifically so we wouldn't have to kill you all. Because unlike you, Commander, we don't enjoy death. The Odyssey was everywhere at once, moving faster than Zarathian targeting systems could track. One by one, the great warships of the Empire went silent and dark, floating dead in space like abandoned tombs. 20 ships down. 50 ships. 100 ships. Vexthal watched his armada die without a single shot being fired by his enemy. How? He gasped. How is this possible? You asked us what changed in 200 years, Captain Chen said. Everything, Commander. Everything changed. We didn't just advance our technology. We revolutionized it. While you were conquering and enslaving, we were learning and building. And now we're here to make sure you never hurt anyone again. Only the Dark Dominion remained operational now, along with a handful of other command ships. The rest of the Grand Armada floated powerless in the void. The Odyssey came to a stop directly in front of Vexthal's flagship. Through the view screen he could see Captain Chen standing on her bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. Surrender, Commander, she said. This doesn't have to go any further. Vexthal's hands trembled with rage and fear. 3,000 years of dominance, 3,000 years of invincibility, ended by one ship, by humans, by insects who should have been irrelevant. Never, he hissed. The Zarathian Empire never surrenders. He turned to his weapons officer. Activate the Apocalypse Protocol. The entire bridge gasped. Sir, the weapons officer stammered. That weapon is forbidden. If we use it here, the energy release could destroy everything within 10 light years. Including us! I don't care, Vextal snarled. If the Empire falls today, then let the humans fall with us. Let this entire region of space become a grave for all of us. At least then, our legend will live on. The Empire that chose death over defeat. His finger moved toward the activation switch, and that's when the Odyssey showed what it could really do. The reckoning time seemed to slow down. Vextal's finger descended toward the Apocalypse Protocol activation switch. One press would trigger the Dark Dominion's core to destabilize, creating an explosion that would wipe out everything nearby. The Zarathian Empire's ultimate act of spite. If we cannot win, nobody wins. His finger was 1 centimeter away, then half a centimeter, and then he couldn't move. Not just his finger, his entire body. Every Zarathian on the bridge was frozen mid-motion, locked in place like insects trapped in amber. Their eyes could still move, darting around in panic, but nothing else would respond. On the view screen, Captain Chen tilted her head slightly. Stasis field, she said calmly. Another little invention. We can freeze time in a localized area. Everything inside stops moving on a molecular level. You can still think, still see, still hear, but you can't act. It's quite effective for preventing desperate commanders from doing something spectacularly stupid. She pressed a button on her chair's armrest. Odyssey to all disabled Zarathian vessels. Stand by for boarding parties. We're sending teams to evacuate your crews and provide humanitarian assistance. Nobody else needs to die today. Through the view screen, Vextal watched in helpless fury as white shuttles emerged from the Odyssey's hangar bays. They were sleek and fast, decorated with a blue symbol that looked like a planet surrounded by olive branches. They dispersed throughout the disabled fleet, docking with the dark Zarathian ships. Minutes passed. Vextal remained frozen, unable to even blink, watching as his empire crumbled. Then, gradually, the stasis field released him. He gasped and stumbled, his body suddenly remembering how to move. Around him, his crew collapsed to the floor, chittering in distress. Captain Chen still watched from the view screen. "I've released you so we can talk," she said. "But understand, Commander, I can freeze you again at any moment. So let's keep this civil, shall we?" Vextal forced himself to straighten, to meet those human eyes with what remained of his dignity. "What do you want, human? You've already won. You've humiliated us. Isn't that enough?" "We want peace," Chen replied. "Real peace. Lasting peace. But that can't happen while the Zarathian Empire exists. So you'll destroy us? Wipe us from the galaxy?" "No," Chen said, and there was something almost sad in her voice. "We're not like you, Commander. We didn't build the Odyssey to conquer. We built it to protect, to defend, to stop bullies from hurting the innocent." She stood and walked closer to the camera again. "Here's what's going to happen. Your crews are being evacuated to temporary habitats we've prepared. They'll be treated well, given food and medical care, and eventually returned to your home worlds. Your ships will be dismantled and recycled. The worlds you've occupied will be liberated. And you, Commander Vextal, along with your senior officers, will stand trial for war crimes." Vextal felt his legs weaken. "Trial, you would judge, yes. We are the supreme species. We are the apex predators of this galaxy." "Were," Chen corrected gently. "You were. But apex predators can still go extinct, Commander, especially when they fail to adapt." She gestured, and new images appeared on the view screen. Vextal saw Zarathian soldiers being gently escorted off their ships by humans in white armor. He saw medical teams treating wounded warriors with care and precision. He saw his people, his warriors, being treated not like conquered enemies, but like patients, like people who needed help. "We studied you for 200 years, Chen continued. "We learned everything about Zarathian biology, psychology, culture. Do you know what we discovered? Your entire civilization is built on trauma." Vextal's mandibles clicked in confusion. "What? 5,000 years ago, your homeworld was invaded by an older species. They nearly wiped you out. Only by becoming more brutal, more ruthless, more cruel than your conquerors did you survive. You've been running from that fear ever since, conquering others so nobody could ever conquer you again. Your empire isn't built on strength, Commander. It's built on terror and old wounds that never healed. Vexthal wanted to deny it, to rage against this human's presumption. But somewhere deep inside, something ancient and painful recognized the truth in her words. So what? He said bitterly. That changes nothing. We are what we are. People can change, Chen said softly. Entire civilizations can change. With help, with guidance, with time. That's what humanity wants to offer you. Not extinction, not enslavement, but rehabilitation. A chance to become something better than what fear made you. She turned away for a moment, looking at something off-screen, then back to him. My people voted on this, Commander. All 15 billion of us. We debated for weeks. Some wanted to destroy your empire completely. Others wanted to leave you isolated and contained. But the majority voted for a different path. We voted to help you heal, because we know what it's like to be shaped by trauma. We know what it's like to build walls of violence to protect ourselves. And we know it's possible to tear those walls down and build something better. Vexthal slumped into his command throne. Everything he had known, everything he had believed was crashing down around him. Why? He finally asked. Why show us mercy? We showed you none. We would have destroyed your world without hesitation. Captain Chen smiled, but it was a sad smile. Because someone has to break the cycle, Commander. Because violence only creates more violence. Because mercy is not weakness. It's the hardest kind of strength there is. She pressed another button, and the stasis field around the bridge crew released completely. You have two choices, Chen said. You can accept our help, stand trial, and work with us to build a better future for the Zarathian people. Or you can refuse, and we'll contain your species on your homeworld, isolated from the rest of the galaxy for the next 1,000 years, until you figure it out yourselves. The choice is yours. Vexthal looked around his bridge. His crew looked back at him, their multiple eyes reflecting confusion, fear, and something he had never seen in Zarathian expressions before. Hope. How do we know this isn't a trick? He asked quietly. How do we know you won't betray us once we surrender? You don't, Chen admitted. You'll have to trust us. I know that's hard. Trust doesn't come easily to predators, especially wounded ones. But I can promise you this. Humanity keeps its promises. Always. It's one of our most annoying traits according to the other species we've encountered. Other species. Vexthal caught that. There are others. Other civilizations that oppose us? Oh, Commander, Chen said with a wider smile. Did you really think humanity did all this alone? That we built ships like the Odyssey without help? No. While you were busy conquering, we were busy making friends, making alliances, building a coalition of free peoples dedicated to protecting each other. There are 97 species in the human-led Galactic Coalition, and every single one of them voted to give you a chance at redemption rather than destruction. She let that sink in. 97 civilizations, Commander. Some you knew about. Many you didn't because they were too small, too weak, too far away to matter to your empire. But they all mattered to us. And together, we're stronger than you ever were at your peak. Vexthal felt the last pillar of his worldview crack and crumble. The Zarathian Empire hadn't fallen to one ship. It had fallen to an entire galaxy that had united against them. United by these strange, soft, impossibly stubborn humans. He started, then stopped. What could he say? What was there left to say? Captain Chen seemed to understand his hesitation. You don't have to decide right now, she said gently. Think about it. Talk to your crew. We'll wait. We've been waiting 200 years. We can wait a little longer. The transmission ended, leaving Vexthal staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited in silence. Finally, Krill spoke up, his voice small and uncertain. Commander, what do we do? Vexthal closed all four of his eyes. 3,000 years of tradition told him to fight, to rage, to die rather than surrender. But another voice, quieter and deeper, whispered something different. Maybe it's time to try something new. He opened his eyes and looked at his crew. Really looked at them. They weren't the proud, confident warriors he'd commanded just hours ago. They looked tired, afraid, lost, just like he felt. Contact the human ship, he said quietly. Tell Captain Chen, tell her we accept her offer. We will stand trial. We will cooperate. We will try to change. The words felt strange in his mouth, like speaking a language he'd never learned. But they also felt impossibly like relief. The bridge crew's reactions were mixed. Some chittered in approval. Others looked shocked. A few looked angry. But nobody protested. Nobody argued. Because deep down, every Zarathian on that bridge knew the truth. The Empire was over, and maybe, just maybe, that wasn't the worst thing that could have happened. The galaxy watches news of the Zarathian Empire's defeat spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Then faster, as species with FTL communication relayed the impossible story to every corner of known space. The invincible Empire had fallen, to one ship, to humanity, on 1,000 worlds, in 1 million cities across billions of homes. People who had lived in fear for generations suddenly dared to hope. The Peloran survivors, those few who had escaped the recent invasion, wept with joy and disbelief. The Zentharan resistance fighters, who had been waging a hopeless guerrilla war for decades, dropped their weapons and celebrated. The Quilox diplomats, who had spent centuries negotiating humiliating treaties to avoid annihilation, danced in their embassy halls. But not everyone was celebrating. On the bridge of the Odyssey, Captain Sarah Chen sat in her command chair, reading reports from across the galaxy. Her expression was thoughtful, almost worried. Her first officer, Commander Marcus Torres, stood beside her. He was a tall man, with grey temples and sharp eyes that had seen too many battles. "The liberated worlds are sending thanks," he said. "Diplomatic messages are flooding in from every direction. The Peloran government in exile wants to name their first freed city, Chen City, in your honor. Tell them I'm honored, but would prefer they choose a traditional Peloran name." Chen replied without looking up. "This isn't about human glory. It's about everyone's freedom." Torres smiled slightly. "I already sent that message." They insisted anyway. Compromise was new hope, which sounds suspiciously like someone on their council is a fan of old Earth cinema. That got a small smile from Chen, but it faded quickly as she continued scrolling through reports. "What's wrong, Captain?" Torres asked. "We won, decisively, perfectly even. No casualties on either side. The Zarathian leadership is cooperating. This is literally the best possible outcome." "That's what worries me," Chen said quietly. She turned her chair to face him. "It was too easy, Marcus. Too easy." Torres raised an eyebrow. "Captain, we spent 200 years preparing for this moment. Every human on Earth sacrificed everything to build this ship and this technology. How is that too easy? I don't mean our preparation. I mean their defeat. The Zarathian Empire conquered this galaxy for 3,000 years, and they folded after one engagement. Doesn't that bother you?" Torres considered this. They didn't have a choice. "Our technology is that much more advanced." "Exactly," Chen said, standing and pacing. "Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs. Millennia in some aspects. We can disable their ships from across space. We can freeze them in time. We can phase through their hulls like they're not even there. From their perspective, Marcus, we might as well be gods." She stopped pacing and looked out the view screen at the disabled Zarathian fleet hanging in space like dead giants. "And that terrifies me." Torres was quiet for a moment. "You're worried about the power imbalance." "I'm worried about what it might do to us," Chen corrected. "Humanity spent 200 years focused on one goal: stop the Zarathians. We united like never before. We worked together perfectly. We became the heroes the galaxy needed. But now what? We have this incredible power, this unmatched technology. We have 500 Zarathian warships at our mercy. We have an entire galaxy looking to us for leadership. And you're worried we'll become what we fought against," Torres said slowly. "Wouldn't you be?" Chen turned to face him. "Power corrupts, Marcus. It always has. Throughout human history, every time someone or some nation became too powerful, they eventually started abusing that power. Rome, Britain, America, China. The pattern repeats. And now we have more power than any of them ever dreamed of." Torres nodded slowly. "That's why we built in the safeguards. The coalition oversight, the democratic controls. The Odyssey answers to all of humanity, not just a military command structure." Safeguards can be dismantled, Chen said quietly. Democracy can be subverted. We need something stronger, something that will keep humanity honest, even when we have the power to be dishonest with no consequences. What did you have in mind? Chen walked back to her chair and pulled up a document on her console. I've been drafting something, with help from some of our best philosophers, ethicists, and historians. I'm calling it the Covenant of Stars. She shared it to Torres's datapad. He read silently, his eyes widening. These are strict, he finally said. Very strict. They have to be, Chen replied. We're proposing that humanity and the Coalition voluntarily limit our own power. No use of time stasis technology except in emergency defense situations. No use of neural disruptors on populated areas. Mandatory sharing of defensive technologies with all Coalition members. Democratic oversight for all military actions. And most importantly, a hard limit on how many ships like the Odyssey we can build. The Council will never agree to that last one, Torres said. They'll want a fleet of these ships for protection. That's exactly the problem, Chen said firmly. If we build a fleet, we become the new dominant power. We become the new empire, even if we have good intentions. And empires, Marcus, always eventually become tyrannical. It's not a question of if, but when. She stood again, her voice taking on the passionate intensity that had made her humanity's choice to lead this mission. We have to be different. We have to prove that power doesn't have to corrupt, that strength doesn't have to lead to dominance, that victory doesn't have to lead to empire. If we can do that, if we can show the galaxy that it's possible to be powerful and still choose restraint, then maybe we can break the cycle. Maybe we can create something that actually lasts. Torres was quiet for a long moment, rereading the document. Finally, he looked up. It's risky. Limiting ourselves like this means if a new threat emerges, something worse than the Zarathians, we might not be able to respond effectively. I know, Chen said, but I believe the bigger risk is becoming the very thing we set out to destroy. I'd rather die fighting against tyranny than live as tyrants ourselves. Very idealistic, said a new voice. Both Chen and Torres turned to see someone entering the bridge. Not human. It was Ambassador Quileth, representative of the Quilox Diplomatic Union, one of the oldest members of the Coalition. She was tall and slender, with iridescent skin that shifted colors as she moved, and large, gentle eyes. Ambassador, Chen said with surprise, I didn't expect you aboard until tomorrow's coordination meeting. I finished my consultations with the liberated Pelleran government early, Quileth said, her voice like wind chimes. I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but I wanted to speak with you privately. I overheard some of your conversation. She glided closer, her movements graceful despite the artificial gravity. May I speak candidly, Captain? Always, Ambassador. Quileth's skin shifted to a deep blue, which Chen had learned indicated seriousness in Quilox body language. Your Covenant of Stars is the most human thing I've ever seen, Quileth said, and I mean that as the highest compliment. Only humanity would gain overwhelming power and immediately start planning how to limit it. Only humanity would win a perfect victory and spend the aftermath worrying about becoming villains. She looked out the view screen at the stars. Do you know why the Coalition trusted humanity to build the Odyssey? Why 97 species pooled their resources and knowledge to help you create this incredible technology? Because we were willing to unite everyone against a common threat. Chen guessed. No, Quileth said gently, because we studied your history. We saw your mistakes, yes, your wars, your cruelties, your failures. But we also saw something else. We saw a species that constantly tries to be better than it was. That questions itself, that holds itself accountable even when no one else can. You're the only species we've ever encountered that invented the concept of universal human rights while simultaneously violating them, then spent centuries trying to actually live up to your own ideals. She turned back to Chen. You fail constantly. You're messy and contradictory and often hypocritical. But you never stop trying. You never stop questioning whether you're good enough, strong enough, ethical enough. And that self-doubt, that constant striving for improvement, is why we trust you with this power. Chen felt emotion welling up in her chest. Ambassador, Your covenant will pass the Coalition Council, Quileth interrupted gently. Not just because it's a good idea, though it is. but because it's exactly what we hoped you would propose. It's proof that our faith in humanity wasn't misplaced." She smiled, her skin shifting to a warm gold. "Build your single ship, Captain Chen. Set your limits. Create your safeguards. Show the galaxy what responsible power looks like. And when other species see what you've done, when they see that strength doesn't have to lead to domination, they'll follow your example. Not because you forced them, but because you inspired them." Chen felt tears forming in her eyes. She blinked them back quickly, trying to maintain her composure. "Thank you, Ambassador. That means more than you know." Quylith's skin rippled with colors Chen couldn't quite identify. "Don't thank me yet. The real work is just beginning. Dismantling an empire is one thing. Building a lasting peace is much harder." She was right, of course. Over the next weeks, the galaxy transformed. Zarathian occupation forces withdrew from 47 worlds, escorted by coalition peacekeepers. Freed populations emerged from bunkers and hiding places, blinking in sunlight they thought they'd never see again. Refugee ships returned home. Families reunited. Civilizations began to rebuild, but it wasn't all celebration and joy. On some worlds, liberated populations wanted revenge. They wanted to execute Zarathian prisoners, to burn their ships, to visit upon their former conquerors every cruelty they had suffered. The coalition had to intervene multiple times to prevent massacres. "They hurt us for decades." A Peloran resistance leader shouted at Chen during one tense negotiation. "They killed our families! They enslaved our children! And you want us to just forgive them?" Chen stood firm, though her heart ached at the pain in the woman's voice. "No, I'm not asking you to forgive them. Forgiveness is personal, and nobody can demand that of you. But I'm asking you not to become like them. Justice, yes. Trials, yes. Accountability, absolutely. But not revenge, not mass murder. Because if we respond to genocide with genocide, then everything we fought for means nothing." It was hard. The hardest thing Chen had ever done. Harder even than facing the Zarathian armada. But slowly, painfully, the freed peoples agreed to a system of justice rather than vengeance. Meanwhile, on the Odyssey, another transformation was taking place. Commander Vexthal sat in a comfortable room that served as his temporary quarters. It wasn't a cell exactly. The door wasn't locked, but coalition security forces were stationed outside, and he couldn't leave without an escort. He didn't mind. In truth, he was grateful for the confinement. It gave him time to think, time to process, time to come to terms with the collapse of everything he'd ever known. A chime sounded at his door. "Enter," he called in Galactic Standard, still getting used to speaking a language that wasn't Zarathian battle cant. Captain Chen walked in, carrying 2 steaming cups. She set one in front of him. "Tea," she said simply. "I wasn't sure if Zarathians could digest it, but our xenobiologist said it should be safe for you." Vexthal picked up the cup carefully with his manipulator claws. The warmth felt good. He sipped cautiously. The taste was strange, bitter and sweet at once, but not unpleasant. "Thank you," he said. Chen sat across from him, cradling her own cup. For a moment, they just sat in silence, 2 former enemies sharing tea in a room aboard humanity's most powerful warship. "Why are you here, Captain?" Vexthal finally asked. "Surely you have more important things to do than visit a prisoner." "You're not a prisoner," Chen corrected gently. "You're a guest awaiting trial. There's a difference. And I'm here because I wanted to talk to you, person to person, not commander to commander. About what? About what comes next, for you, for your people." Vexthal's mandibles clicked in what might have been a bitter laugh. "There is no next for my people. The Empire is over. We are defeated, broken. We will be forever remembered as the galaxy's greatest villains." "Maybe," Chen said, "or maybe you'll be remembered as the civilization that changed. That learned. That became something better. You keep saying that, as if change is simple, as if we can just decide to be different and it happens." Chen set down her cup and leaned forward slightly. "I never said it was simple, Commander. Change is the hardest thing any person or civilization can do. It requires admitting you were wrong. It requires facing your past honestly, even when that past is full of horrors. It requires choosing every single day to be better than you were yesterday." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Humanity knows something about this. We spent most of our history hurting each other. Wars, genocide, slavery, oppression. We've done terrible things, Commander. Things we're still ashamed of. But we learned that the only way forward was to acknowledge our mistakes, make amends where possible, and commit to never repeating them. And did it work? Vextall asked. Did humanity succeed in becoming better? Sometimes, Chen admitted. We still fail. We still have prejudice, still have violence, still have people who want to dominate others. But we're better than we were 1,000 years ago. Better than we were 500 years ago. Better than we were even 200 years ago when we learned about the Zarathian Empire and had to decide what kind of species we wanted to be. She looked directly at him with those strange, soft human eyes. You can do the same, Commander. Your people can do the same. It won't be easy. It will take generations. But it's possible. I believe that with everything I am. Vextall felt something crack inside his chest. Not his exoskeleton. Something deeper. Something he didn't have words for. Why do you care? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Why does any of this matter to you? You won. You could just lock us away and forget about us. Why go to all this effort? Chen smiled sadly. Because I'm human, Commander. And humans have this terrible, wonderful habit of caring about people, even when those people have given us every reason not to. It's one of our greatest weaknesses and our greatest strength. She stood up, finishing her tea. The trial begins in 3 days. It will be broadcast across the galaxy. You'll have a chance to speak, to explain, to defend yourself if you choose. And after the trial, regardless of the verdict, we'll help your people find a path forward. A better path, if you'll let us. She walked to the door, then paused and looked back. Get some rest, Commander. You've got a long journey ahead of you, but you don't have to walk it alone. Then she was gone, leaving Vextall alone with his thoughts and a cooling cup of strange human tea. He sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, processing everything for 3,000 years. The Zarathian Empire had been built on one simple principle: strength is everything. The strong dominate. The weak submit. That was the natural order of the universe. But these humans had shattered that principle. They were stronger than anyone, yet they chose restraint. They had the power to conquer, yet they chose cooperation. They had every right to revenge, yet they chose rehabilitation. It made no sense. It defied everything Vextall thought he understood about how the universe worked. And yet, somehow, it worked. It was working. Right now, across the galaxy, species were coming together not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to. They were building something new, something better, something the Zarathian Empire, for all its power, had never achieved. A peace that lasted not because everyone was afraid, but because everyone agreed. Vextall picked up the teacup again and took another sip. Still bitter, still sweet, still strange. But maybe strange wasn't bad. Maybe strange was exactly what the galaxy needed. The new dawned 3 days later. The trial of Commander Vextall and the Zarathian High Command began. It was held not on Earth, not on any Zarathian world, but on a neutral station that the Coalition had constructed specifically for this purpose. They called it Unity Station, a massive structure built in open space where representatives from every member species could gather. The courtroom was circular, with the accused in the center and observers arranged in rings around them. But it wasn't designed to be intimidating or oppressive. Soft light filtered through crystal panels. The temperature was comfortable for multiple species. Translators worked seamlessly, ensuring everyone could understand and be understood. Captain Chen sat in the observer section with Ambassador Quileth and dozens of other Coalition representatives. She watched as Vextall was led to the center platform. He wore no restraints. He walked freely, though Coalition security officers flanked him at a respectful distance. The presiding arbiter was a being called the Witness, a member of the ancient eternal species that rarely involved themselves in galactic affairs. They were chosen specifically because they had no stake in the outcome, no history with either humanity or the Zarathians. Their role was simply to ensure fairness. The Witness's form shimmered with soft light as they spoke, their voice somehow reaching everyone simultaneously without technology. We gather to render justice. The Witness began. Not revenge, not punishment for punishment's sake. but accountability, understanding, and the possibility of redemption. They turned their luminous form toward Vexthal. Commander Vexthal, representative of the Zarathian Empire, you stand accused of war crimes, genocide, enslavement of sentient species, and crimes against sapient life. The evidence against you is overwhelming. 47 civilizations destroyed or subjugated, billions killed or enslaved, countless worlds scarred by your actions. How do you answer these charges? The entire station fell silent. Trillions watched across the galaxy, on screens and holograms and through direct neural links. This moment would define the future. Everyone knew it. Vexthal stood quietly for a long moment. His four eyes swept the room, seeing representatives from species the Zarathian Empire had hurt. Seeing humans who had every reason to hate him. Seeing countless faces, countless species, all waiting to hear what he would say. Guilty, he said simply, on all charges. I am guilty. My people are guilty. The Zarathian Empire is guilty. Murmurs rippled through the observers. Some sounded satisfied. Others shocked that it had been so easy, but Vexthal wasn't finished. I do not deny what we did, he continued, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. I do not make excuses. I do not claim we were justified. For 3,000 years my people spread suffering across this galaxy. We told ourselves we were strong, that we were superior, that we were simply taking what was rightfully ours. But we were wrong. He turned slowly, trying to make eye contact with as many observers as possible. We were cowards. We were so afraid of being weak, so terrified of being hurt again like we were 5,000 years ago, that we hurt everyone else first. We became the monsters we feared, and in doing so we lost something essential. We lost the ability to see other beings as people. We saw only resources, only obstacles, only things to be conquered. His voice cracked slightly. I have spent these past weeks in human custody. They have treated me with kindness I did not deserve. They have given me medical care, comfortable quarters, good food. They have talked to me not as an enemy, but as a person. And it has forced me to see something I spent my entire life avoiding. He paused, gathering courage. The beings we conquered were people. Real people with hopes and dreams and families and futures. And we took all of that away from them. We silenced countless songs that would never be sung. We destroyed art that would never be created. We ended stories that would never be told. The magnitude of what we did, I don't think I can truly comprehend it. I don't think any Zarathian can. But we must try. We must face what we've done. All of it, no matter how much it hurts. Tears, or something like tears, formed at the edges of his eyes. Zarathians could cry, Chen realized. She'd never known that. I cannot undo what I've done, Vexthal said quietly. I cannot bring back the dead. I cannot heal the wounds. I cannot turn back time and make different choices. All I can do is acknowledge the truth, accept responsibility, and spend whatever time I have left trying to make amends. If the Coalition chooses to execute me, I will accept that judgment. I deserve nothing less. But before that happens, I have one request. The witness tilted their luminous form. Speak your request. Let me talk to my people. Let me tell them what I've learned. Let me help them understand that the Empire's way was wrong, that there is a better path. Let me try to guide them toward redemption, even if I don't deserve it myself. The courtroom erupted in voices, some shouting in agreement, others in anger, some demanding mercy, others demanding justice. The witness raised a limb and silence fell instantly. The request is noted, they said. Now we will hear testimony from those affected by Zarathian actions. For 6 hours, representatives from liberated worlds came forward. They told their stories, their losses, their pain, their trauma. Chen watched as Vexthal listened to every word, his body language showing increasing anguish as the testimonies piled up. A Pelleran woman described watching her children taken by Zarathian soldiers, never to be seen again. A Zenthar male told of spending 20 years in slave mines, his body permanently damaged by the work. A Quailox elder recounted the destruction of their species' most sacred temple, burned by Zarathians simply to prove they could, story after story, horror after horror. When the testimonies finally ended, the witness turned back to Vexthal. Having heard these accounts, do you still accept responsibility? Yes, Vexthal said, his voice hollow. Yes, all of it. Every word. Every loss. I accept responsibility for all of it. Then we must determine appropriate justice. The witness consulted with a panel of jurists from various species. They deliberated for 3 hours while the station waited in tense silence. Finally, they returned. The verdict is as follows, the witness announced. Commander Vexthal and the Zarathian High Command are guilty of all charges. Under standard coalition law, the penalty would be execution. Gasps filled the chamber. However, the witness continued, these are not standard circumstances. Captain Chen of the UES Odyssey has filed a petition for clemency, arguing that Vexthal's genuine remorse and willingness to help reform his civilization makes him more valuable alive than dead. The Coalition Council has voted to accept this petition, with conditions. They turn their full attention to Vexthal. You will be sentenced to life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole after 50 years. During your imprisonment, you will work with rehabilitation specialists to develop programs for Zarathian cultural reform. You will serve as a teacher, a guide, and a warning to your people about the path they must not walk again. You will dedicate your life to making amends, knowing you can never fully succeed. Do you accept this sentence? Vexthal dropped to his knees, overcome with emotion. Yes, I accept. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the chance to try to be better. The courtroom filled with mixed reactions. Some approved, others protested, but the decision was made, justice tempered with mercy, accountability combined with opportunity for redemption. It was the most human verdict possible. The days following the trial were busy ones. The coalition formally dissolved the Zarathian Empire, transforming it into the Zarathian Reconstruction Authority. Zarathian worlds would govern themselves democratically, with coalition oversight to ensure they didn't slip back into old patterns. Educational programs were developed to teach young Zarathians about their history honestly, including the terrible things their empire had done. Therapists and counselors worked with traumatized populations on both sides, the Zarathians who had to face their guilt and the liberated peoples who had to heal from their wounds. It would take generations, maybe centuries, but it was beginning. On the bridge of the Odyssey, Captain Chen watched the reports with cautious optimism. The galaxy was changing, slowly, painfully, but genuinely. Captain, Commander Torres said, approaching her chair. We've received a message from Earth. The Global Assembly has voted. The Covenant of Stars has been ratified. Chen felt relief wash over her. All provisions? All provisions, Torres confirmed. Humanity agrees to limit its power. The Odyssey will remain the only ship of its class. All defensive technologies will be shared with coalition members. Democratic oversight is now mandatory for any military action. We're binding ourselves to rules that nobody else can enforce on us. Good, Chen said simply. That's how it should be, Torres smiled. 50 years ago people would have called you naive, weak. They'd say you're giving away our advantages for nothing. They'd be wrong, Chen replied. We're not giving away anything. We're investing in something much more valuable than military dominance. We're investing in trust, in cooperation, in a galaxy where power doesn't have to lead to tyranny. She stood and walked to the view screen, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 47 worlds were rebuilding. Somewhere, Zarathian children were learning a new way to live. Somewhere, species that had been enemies for millennia were learning to work together. It was messy. It was imperfect. It would stumble and struggle and sometimes fail, but it was beautiful. Set course for Earth, she ordered. It's time to go home. I think humanity has earned a rest. We've got a galaxy to help rebuild, but we can't do it if we burn ourselves out. Course set, Captain. The navigator confirmed. ETA to Earth, 6 days. As the Odyssey turned toward home, Chen allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. They had done it. They had stopped an empire without becoming one themselves. They had proven that strength and compassion weren't opposites, but partners. But then her console chimed with a priority message. She frowned and opened it. It was from the Coalition's Deep Space Monitoring Network. An automated message, flagged as urgent. Attention all Coalition vessels. We have detected an anomalous signal from beyond the galactic rim. Pattern matches no known species. Signal strength suggests massive energy output, possibly hostile. All coalition forces should remain alert. Further updates to follow. Chen stared at the message for a long moment. Then she smiled, not with fear, but with quiet determination. Of course, she muttered. The galaxy never stays quiet for long, does it? Torres had read the message over her shoulder. Should we investigate, Captain? Chen thought about it. Thought about how tired everyone was. Thought about how much the galaxy had just been through. Thought about how humanity had just promised to be responsible with its power. But she also thought about what Captain's log promised. About the duty to protect. About standing between innocent people and the things that wanted to hurt them. Not yet, she decided. Let the automated systems track it for now. Alert the coalition. Prepare analysis teams. But we go home first. Humanity needs to rest, to reconnect with Earth, to remember why we're doing all this. Then, if the threat proves real and the coalition requests our help, we'll be ready. She turned to face her bridge crew, these humans who had sacrificed so much, who had spent their entire lives preparing for a single mission. We proved that one ship can change the galaxy, she said. But we also proved something more important. We proved that doing the right thing isn't about being the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. It's about choosing, every single day, to be better than you were yesterday, to help instead of hurt, to build instead of destroy, to show mercy instead of cruelty. She smiled at them with genuine warmth. That's what humanity is now. That's what we chose to be, and no matter what comes next, no matter what new threats emerge from beyond the rim or anywhere else, we'll face them the same way. With courage, with compassion, and with an absolute refusal to become the monsters we fight. The crew cheered, tired but genuine enthusiasm in their voices. The Odyssey continued toward Earth, carrying home the crew that had saved the galaxy, not through conquest, but through showing everyone a better way to live. Behind them, the Zarathian fleet, now being retrofitted for peaceful purposes, floated in space like monuments to what once was and what would never be again. Above them, the stars shone with light that had traveled for millions of years to reach this moment. And ahead of them, Earth waited. That small blue world where humanity had first looked up at those stars and dared to dream that they could make a difference. They had dreamed. They had prepared. They had succeeded. And now, whatever came next, they would face it together, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as guardians, as friends, as partners in a galaxy that was finally learning what peace could look like. The Zarathian Empire had fallen, but something better had risen to take its place. A coalition of free peoples, united not by fear but by hope. And at the center of it all, one human ship, powerful beyond measure, yet restrained by choice. The Odyssey. Humanity's promise to the galaxy, a promise they intended to keep. The end. The measure of intelligence is not power, but restraint. The mark of civilization is not dominance, but compassion. And the true test of strength is not in how much you can destroy, but in how much you can protect. Captain Sarah Chen, upon returning to Earth, year 2225.